chaos hits, you need to have a playbook.
Hello, everyone. That is the first time I've actually seen that intro video, so it is cool. I liked it. We have people hopping on, so I will just kind of give it a minute or two while everyone gets logged into everything. Myself, Gareth, and Raphael were just talking about the joys of AI before we started this and how to tell the difference in real people and AI. But yeah, thank you so much for hopping on. I would give it a minute to clock up, but there we go. I was about to say, thanks, Cody, you're not AI. If people want to start dropping in where they're coming from, what they're doing, that would always be nice to kind of see faces and names. Well, we won't see faces, but I am logging in from the middle of nowhere in Ireland. Do you guys want to kind of kick off on where you guys are based?
You want to go first, Raphael?
Sure. I'm Raphael, and I'm down in North London. Um,
So I'm Gareth from Applegraph. We're based in sort of central or in East Midlands, which is central England. For those that don't know us.
You guys are in more recognizable places in the world than I am. So there we go. Yeah, we were just talking about half terms, Kevin, and everyone kind of taking their shifts on minding the kids. So,
I've just
perfect.
finished my shift over here, so yeah, I've done my morning.
Perfect. Right. Let's start kicking off. We will have more people kind of drop in as we're doing this, but we can kind of start talking and start going as people log in. So I know you guys quickly said who you were. To introduce everything, my name is Aideen. I am the community lead over here in EMEA. So I actually was an account manager. I recognize some names. I might have been some of your account managers. And I have moved into a community lead. So that is part of the Fireside chat, is bringing this over here to EMEA. We did run one in September. This is the second of the series. Good news is we will be running every second month now going forward, may become every month, but for now we'll be back again in April. This month's segment, I suppose, is based on QBRs and how to make sure we're doing the business first QBRs and having the proper conversations. We have a really nice kind of mix here. Raphael with CardNet has been running them for a little while. Gareth with Apagraph. It's new to the business, kind of a new thing they're running. So I'm hoping that we get like a good bracket on the experience and going and introducing it into the business. So Raphael, I will let you start off saying, I know you're a director here with CardNet, but if you want to go ahead, introduce yourself, CardNet, and if you could also answer, what was the biggest early mistake you guys might have made or think you made in client reviews?
so Raphael Waller over here, CCO over at CardNet. We're an MSP, London based, but also with operations based out of LA, California. And we're very sort of vertical focused, which I think will kind of lead into sort of what I'm able to talk about and contribute over here with the very particular focus in hotels, hospitality, restaurants, and retail. I think probably my earliest mistake on this was thinking that customers cared about things like firewalls, that they cared about how much mail was blocked and things like that. And I think people shrugged a lot when we tried to talk about that. So yeah, looking forward to sharing what we've learned and also hearing from people in the Q&A and chat as well.
Absolutely. And Gareth, if you want to go ahead and do the exact same thing, who you are, who Apagraph is, and the biggest early mistake you guys found in client reviews.
So I'm Gareth. I'm the Commercial Operations Director here at Applegraph. We're a small MSSP, so we're based in the East Midlands. We service professional services clients, so solicitors, accounts firms, things like that, up length and breadth of the country. As you mentioned, QBRs are quite new to us. So I suppose the first big mistake was understanding that we weren't doing them and we should be. And then early on, it was quite apparent not to just use them as a checklist.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Probably the quickest one I learned.
Yeah, I know. And this is like all these things will start coming to the forefront, but it's hard to see it before you start. So yeah, so we're gonna have our first poll question get sent out to everyone. And the first question, and maybe you guys can answer this without seeing, oh, your poll will have popped up. But the question is, what is the biggest hurdle currently preventing you from holding regular high-valued business reviews? So you guys, like maybe this will be something that you guys can answer to effect of what's kind of brought it to the forefront, what was stopping it get there.
Ooh, I suppose I'll go first, I guess. I suppose from our standpoint, because we're relatively new to it, we're going through that learning phase of, and it's like getting the right data for the client, what they find interesting. I think Raphael mentioned it earlier. There's a lot of bits where we as IT professionals will go, this is really important. This is what you need to hear about. And you just get that glazed look of actually, well, yeah, great, but we have no idea what you're talking about or why it affects us, which then obviously causes different conversations. So I think initially our bit is getting the right information that's relevant to the audience you're going to do the review with.
I think it's a really, a combination of all of the above. But I think particularly with most of MSPs being small businesses, most of us are holding so many roles, and it's very tough to prioritize and choose what it is that we're going to focus on. And so especially when something's a bit more challenging, requires a lot of preparation, and you're looking at what it is, it's easy to get distracted and look at something else. So not being, whilst trying to get away from the idea of something that's very templated and very rigid, at the same time, it's also quite important to have that rigidity, because it allows you to kind of be prepared and have that structure and that crutch to sort of rely on, as well. I think is I think what I've is what I've found.
Perfect, absolutely. So I want to start at the beginning then. We've done the first poll, we've kind of seen what everyone's thinking. Let's start at the beginning. Why do we think business reviews are important? So when you're doing a QBR, what is the purpose of it? Like, what is your goal by the end of that to have gotten to? I know I've pulled together kind of ideas of you wanting to update your customers, you want to get budget planning done, service reviews done. Is that the end goal, or what is the goal you're trying to get to from them?
I think, whilst it's a bit crass to say this, I think every relationship that we have is transactional.
Yeah.
And it's always important to sort of rebalance what that transaction is, and trying to get away, and really trying to understand what is that transaction and how are we contributing value. Because sort of as an MSP, what we can charge, or making sure that the customer is happy with what we're charging, is about making sure that we're contributing business value. So really the end goal for me, with a business review with a customer, is understanding what they're going through, what's going on in their lives, and making sure that we're aligning and we're contributing value there primarily. And sort of, I think as we go deeper into this, there are different things that contribute value to different people, whether it's reducing risk or increasing efficiencies or anything like that. That's different for different people, but primarily it's making sure that we're delivering value.
Okay, and just sorry, Gareth, I'm going to cut in before you even get to answer, because I have a question for Raphael off that. When you guys go into the QBRs, are you saying, okay, this is Cardnet I'm speaking to today, and I need to break down exactly what I need to speak to them about it, and then we have Apigraph tomorrow, and we need to break down what we're speaking to about them, or speaking about to them? Or do you guys have like a blanket, this is what we must cover within our QBRs?
Try and keep it flexible.
Okay.
It really depends on the account manager that is going in there and doing that, and what kind of relationship that they have, and those kind of things. So when preparing for it, we've gone in cycles. So we did, a couple of years back, have a slide deck that showed all the service tickets and the feedback from their staff, and that was kind of a way of showing what we were contributing. We've kind of gone back in the other direction, partially because probably this was before we changed PSA and our reporting was terrible, and the time that it took us to pull that together was just obscene. And so we probably went away from that at the time. But really trying to just focus on conversations and getting away from technology and more about how technology impacts with them. and even departing from things around technology too, and really having more human conversations with customers, really.
Yeah, makes sense. Sorry now, Gareth, back to you.
That's right. No problem. Yeah, I mean, to a large extent, it's repeating what Raphael's just said. I think one of the key important bits for me is understanding what value we're adding to the business, to a business, but also what that perceived value is as well, and trying to bridge the gap between the two. Because what we might put in as really good value to that business, they may not understand its benefits properly, and so they'll actually have a very low perception of its value. Also, every client is different. They all have different needs. They all have different interpretations of what they perceive as a good value. So with that, I don't think you can have a particularly rigid framework. I think it needs to be, as Raphael mentioned, it does need to be more flexible and more centric around that client, those clients individually. And again, yeah, it's more about taking the technology out of the conversation and reaffirming that at the end of it, it's people. It's people trying to use the technology. So it's getting, is there any barriers that's stopping you doing that particular job function? Is it something we can support you with, or is it something where you need another piece of technology to make that easier for you? And just generally understand how the operation of their business is going. And it's all about partnerships ultimately. Yes, there is a transaction, but the partnership is as important as the transaction itself. So it is really making sure that all the stakeholders across the whole thing are all happy and they can all do their job, and their staff can do their job as well without having to have a degree in technology of some form or another.
Yeah,
And
makes complete sense.
On this side, I know the ones, we do make sure that in everyone that we do, we include, what is probably most people are doing, a review of kind of, devices that are out of warranty, what's coming up in their refreshes. Gareth, is there anything that you do in every single one, or that you make sure that you present, or a specific statistic that you always show?
I suppose it's more the kind of user counts and like that. So the actual raw transaction bit, just to make sure, do you still have 250 users that all need this license? Let's get all that bit out of the way first and do the actual business bit and get that done. Make those contractual changes if they're needed. But then we try and focus it more, the ones that we've done since we started doing, we've tried to make it more about conversations on where are you now, where do you want to be, and how quickly do you want to get there? So, we've had some where they've all been on premise and they've actually, want to go to cloud. So, okay, well, when do you want to go to cloud? How do you want that to look like? And then we slowly build that over several reviews. And you're going with, you're going with an initial idea, and actually by the end of it, it's going to be a completely different look of what was originally envisioned. So I think, there is a bit where we just do the raw numbers bit first. At some point, that's the main bit. Your account review, I guess, would probably be a suitable descriptor for it. How many users have you got? We're billing you for X. You've got Y. Let's realign that. And then, we go into the conversations then, all about the partnership building. What can we do to help you achieve what you need to do?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That makes complete sense. And I know that you also mentioned, so we've kind of talked briefly about you coming and doing it recently, and Raphael, you kind of been doing it for a while. What began you saying we need to do QBRs? What changed, or what kind of came to the forefront of you saying, right, we need to sit down and quarterly speak to everyone?
For me, it was quite an easy one. We went through ISO.
Okay.
So it became part of our quality management system to carry it out. And you sort of look into it, actually, yes, okay, it's extra work, but actually when you look at how it goes across the life cycle of that client, first you're going to extend that life cycle. Secondly, you're not going to know if you're doing anything wrong unless you go and ask them. The first time you're going to know, if you don't, the first time you're going to know something is going wrong is literally when they're about to pull the plug on it because they've just had enough. Whereas if you go in on a fairly regular basis, is there any hurdles? Is there any roadblocks to what we're trying to do for you? You'll tend to hear them a lot sooner before they become a problem. But the main reason we brought them in was we just integrated it into our QMS system as part of our 9001. But that simply just highlighted, along with ITIL, that actually it's good practice, and it is whilst it's not necessarily difficult, it's more just adapting it. Like I say, you can't treat every client the same. So it's just adapting the methodology to suit each client. I think once we've done a few of them, we'll be in a really good place. But yeah, the main thing is our own internal compliance and just having that understanding of the whole client journey from end to end.
Yeah. And where did you start? How did you begin it all? Like you went, okay, we need to do this. How did you get it going?
The main one for us was when it was actually a bit of an internal review more than anything, looking at what we were offering, how we were deploying it, what led us to become partners with Huntress as a case in point. Understanding that actually, whilst we offered great levels of service, the value wasn't necessarily there in terms of what technology we were implementing to our clients. So that very much was, well, let's do the internal review first, see where we feel we're falling short, get the ideas together of how we can combat that, and then actually go and talk to clients and go unofficially, this is what we're looking at, this is what we're going to do. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that? Yes, there's going to be cost increases, or no, it's going to say about cost neutral. And that then led to, when we started getting into that process and we started doing it internally, it's actually then much more straightforward just to pick up the phone. Half of our reviews now will probably just be, our bigger ones, they're just a phone call. How is everything going? Is there any issues? And whether we do it on Teams with multiple people or just one or two people in a couple of phone calls, it's just getting into that habit. But yeah, it was purely from a compliance standpoint internally that led us to go, yeah, we should be doing this.
Okay, perfect. And Raphael, was it similar for you guys, or was it more of a process that you said, no, we want to start this?
I think it's actually the opposite with us, that it was largely sort of customer driven.
Okay.
And customers coming to us and saying that they want to talk about things, customers that have been there with us since the 90s. And they come and they turn around to us and go, so what is it that you're actually doing these days? And it's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, we just try and slip in the background and just make sure that things are working, that you're getting what you need, but we haven't been very good at actually demonstrate it. And they know that they trust us, but they're just interested in what's going on, what could we be doing more. And I think, there's also the difference in kind of the customer and who your key contact is over there. So, there's a difference in sort of the relationship when it's a proprietor or an owner, who's your contact, whereas whether it's a much larger company, where the person that you're speaking to is a senior manager or something like that, and their priorities are different and what they need to show is different. So, because we're so heavily in the hotel space for our sins, I don't recommend it to others. But in the hotel space, lots of these are franchises that are managed by other people, so they need to present budgets and things to their owners, and so they're going to us and saying, what is it that I need to go to the owner of this business, this hotel, and ask them for money for the upcoming year, and then telling us, this is what we're planning the next year, this is a refurbishment, what is the IT side that we need out of you as a part of that. And so after a bit of that, we've kind of said, we're probably doing a disservice to the people, and we're not doing this with enough people who aren't coming in and putting this forward to us. And so kind of taken that and then gone back, okay, what is it that different people need out of us, and how can we make sure that we're giving it to them?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is like when I was getting my notes together and getting everything ready for this, you guys both touched on 2 points of what I would consider to be the benefits of doing these regular reviews. And it's what you said, Gareth, of there's an issue before an issue becomes an issue. And exactly what you said, Raphael, of you're a trusted advisor. They know they trust you. They don't fully understand why they trust you. So it's nice to kind of put it out on paper and go, this is exactly what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. And this is why we're here. So it's good to hear that what I think is actually what's working in practice. Because it is what the whole point of it is supposed to be, I suppose. So yeah, that's always really good to hear.
I think, Rafa, you mentioned as well, like trust. I think it is a key thing. People will spend money if the initial trust is there at a fundamental level. They never really question it, which isn't necessarily a good thing. They stick with you because they know you and everything else. But I think by having the business reviews, actually, you're bringing that trust to the surface and going, this is why you trust us like you do, because now actually we're demonstrating what we're doing for you in the background, why we are adding value to your business and helping you, which then just further emphasizes that trusting relationship. And like I mentioned earlier, it's all about partnerships.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of to touch on something as well that you'd mentioned, Raphael, about, I know you asked Gareth, is there any like stats, figures, things like that you definitely always bring to them? Do you guys have like resources you pull? You spoke about like your PSA ticketing, things like that, for making sure they're seeing that trusted advisor, to making sure they're seeing why they're trusting you. Is there a certain like pool of resources you get together to make sure you have that to present to them?
Yeah, so we've kind of started leaning into is to splitting it up into three sections.
Okay.
And so the first is sort of like thought is a thought leadership section. And try and bring in there a case study. So a couple of years ago, we lent very heavily on the Huntress MSP to customer slide deck and sort of the evolution of ransomware when that was kind of something people weren't yet aware of really what that is, the implications and how that's evolved, and how the dark web is working. And that was kind of a way of giving something to the customer that they go away, oh, that's something that I learned that's new and that was interesting to me as well. And that was really, that was, people fed that really well. Or this is again, it helps us because we're so deeply integrated into industries, but it helps us to be able to go, this is something that I've seen someone else in your industry, this is how they're evolving, this is how they're increasing their revenue per table, or that kind of stuff like that. And that's kind of a key and main section over there. And then there is stuff to do with that. So that's life cycle management, a bit of ticket stuff like that. But as we sort of evolve, that's something that we're trying to bring out of there. I think that's something that we want to make accessible to the customer and be reminding them, especially on the technical side, a lot more frequently. Whilst the customers do trust and they say, oh, we know you're backing up, for us, it's so important that we're demonstrating and proving it to them on a regular basis. So we have started sending them out user lists and licensing lists on a monthly basis. We're in the process of introducing backup reports to them on a monthly basis so that we're demonstrating, and really showing them this is what we're backing up, this is what we're not backing up, and reminding of them, customers often, oh, we don't need that backed up. And whilst I may not agree with it, I kind of have to listen when they tell me this. But reminding them, reminder that you don't have a backup of this. So we're kind of pulling that back out of the QBR. And then, of course, there's talking, the biggest focus is really just talking about them. What are their problems? 90% of the time, it's the same as us, staff. Sometimes they are doing what they said. Most of the time, it's staff not doing what they're supposed to do and not following process. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Gareth, anything kind of from your side that you guys make sure you have ready to go? Or I know you said you guys pick up the phone, have the conversation, is a lot more just conversational on that side.
Yeah, I mean, we're quite keen on keeping clients informed throughout. So, for example, we brought in Huntress as a standard in our offering, so all our clients were put onto the full Huntress stack. So we make sure that those key stakeholders of interest in that they get the weekly or monthly reports, and then we'll compile a quarterly report because we know that there's going to be a question come up saying, "Oh, we had this come through on someone. Well, how was it dealt with?" And we go, "Well, here's the full report. This is what happened." So we have that element, and similar with our backup solutions and things like that. It does we do the testing and everything else regularly. So I suppose, similar to Raphael, we're trying to split ours up into two kind of separate things. You've got like the technical review, which is like your backups, your security stack, and elsewhere. Realistically, half the people who have in a traditional quarterly review will be like, they'll just switch off to it and glaze over because it's just technically they're not that bothered about. They see it, they understand it's there and it works, but they don't really want to know the nuts and bolts. But then you do also on the other side of it, you also have those that are interested in that. So your compliance officers, your ISMS managers, your data protection officers, they all want to know what security stuff's in place, how is it working, does it need changing, is the BCDR in place, what are we backing up, what aren't we backing up, what's the recovery objective, all that kind of stuff, and they really want to know all that, and that's great. But yeah, you kind of need to split them down the middle now, which is why we kind of pick the phone up as opposed to arrange a big meeting now, because half the people you're wasting their time for the first half, and then you're wasting the other half for the second half of the time. So it's we pull, so similar to like Raphael, we'll pull most of the data from our PSA platform and the various systems we use, and then we can present that. we use Halo as our PSA, so it actually integrates quite well anyway. So we can pull most of it into one inbound report. But yeah, it's more splitting out technical versus actual business relations discussions.
I think it's
Perfect.
interesting, Gareth, what you're saying about having different people there and needing different things from you. One of the kind of the key things that we preach internally is that we should have 3 contacts at the customer, because that's what gives us a strong relationship with them. And those 3 different people are in different roles. One might be the CEO, one might be the CFO, one might be a general manager. And making sure that they have counterparts within our organization as well. So it's not just a one-to-one relationship, and that pinch point between us and the customer is that there are sort of different points, and those different, whilst there is a sort of a general QBR and things like that, but there do absolutely need to be those relationships between the person who cares about compliance and security on the customer side, between someone who they can reach out to and talk to sensibly on that subject, on the MSP side as well.
Absolutely.
I really like that. Yeah, I just wrote that down. I'm going to start implementing that, even not in QBRs. That's such a fair point, though. There's like people in all kind of orgs within the business, and having 3 people means that you actually know what everyone's doing. You know their org. Yeah, I like that one. That's
just
because
they're a stakeholder doesn't mean they have the same overall. They don't have the same direct interest into another stakeholder. They're all different.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it also allows a smoother customer experience and a smoother service, especially with a larger customer where sort of, maybe an office manager is the person who's kind of hearing stuff bubbling up. It's them who needs to have that relationship with your service desk manager, whoever is overseeing service, so that they can pass that through to them. And, I disagree with you, Gareth, a bit, that if something is waiting till the quarterly meeting, to hear that someone's upset, you're in deep trouble if that's what it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
By maintaining those multiple relationships, as soon as someone is feeling a bit frustrated and that goes through to the service desk manager, we're able to act on that a lot quicker. And it also cuts, someone like myself or Gareth or whoever your account managers are, out of that, which is a bottleneck as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It probably wasn't worth me mentioning about half an hour ago, but if anyone has any questions, there's a Q&A box across the bottom. So if you have any questions on anything Gareth or Raphael is saying, feel free to stick them on there or in the chat. I just realized as you guys were talking that I should have said that. Perfect. So then we have how to get clients interested. So it can be hard, as you guys say. People don't always want to hear about their firewalls. People don't always want to hear about what's going on other sides. So let's go to, how do you guys, and this is going to be different because Gareth, I appreciate what you're saying about making the phone calls, but there's still a back end side of it. How are we setting cadences for these business reviews? How are we deciding, yes, we need to talk to them consistently, we need to make sure things are there, but we need to make sure this is set on this exact date, that we are definitely going to have that conversation?
So I suppose from our standpoint, it's being proactive about it, and actually at some point towards, as you're finishing that, the current review, you then start to say, right, actually, let's get the next one planned in, ready to go. Get it in everyone's diaries, get it agreed upon. That way, then it's set and we're done. And if it does need to change, it needs to change. Life doesn't stop for a meeting ultimately, but I think the main thing is being very proactive with it. When we were a few weeks, I was saying, just double checking that this date's still okay for everybody, things like that. Is there anything you want to bring to you want us to be looking into before we arrive? Anything like that, and just constant, regular communication outside of those meetings, I think, is really key. So most of our main customers now, we can. Any kind of issues now, they're more 5-10 minute phone calls rather than a 1-2 hour quarterly meeting. We'd sooner have those much more regular touch points, and going that way. However, the reviews are still going to be important. So yeah, it's more just being disciplined with it, just maintaining that regular communication with the stakeholder, and just is this okay? Is there anything you want to bring up? And then making sure when you do turn up, you bring that information with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's similar to the next question I want to ask, but Raphael, I'd like to hear your input on this before I jump on to the next one again.
I'm a terribly disciplined person, so I'm not a good person to be asking about this. But I think, it's about really about multiple touch points, but really what we try and do is mark in the calendar when we last spoke to them and what we spoke to them about. And that allows us, especially in Halo, to pull a report and say, who haven't we spoken to in the past? The other thing that's very important is also tiering your customers. You know, very candidly, you need to look at them from the revenue that you bring you and how much time can you afford, because this is expensive time, these kind of conversations. And so really looking down it and really putting them into tiers and making sure that the people who are the top 10%, that your top 50%, that tier A, are the people that you're making sure that you're doing that on the regular and the way that you need them. In terms of when we schedule them in for, you know, it's really dependent on sort of what the customer's cadence and needs are. So I know there's a lot of customers that want to speak to us before their budget season hits and before they're preparing their budgets. There are others that kind of want to speak to us sort of about reliability and things like that. You know, accountants before the tax season hits, they want to make sure that everything is okay and bolted up. And then it's kind of afterwards, they want to speak about improvements that they want to make. So it's really about understanding that with them and making sure that, you know, you're tailoring it to what they're looking for.
Yeah, so I was just about to add, it's probably important as well. So yes, it's important to be disciplined and make sure you standardise them, but also be flexible with it. You know, like Raphael said, they may be doing the budget, so actually they might want to coordinate the next review based on their budget meeting before they start planning budgets. So it may bring it forward a couple of weeks. It's all those kind of, it's being disciplined but being flexible, I think.
Yeah,
and I think the one thing that I'd say over there is that, you know, you're not doing a good job when the customer postpones it. Obviously,
Yes.
everyone postpones things as well, you know, has to postpone things. But, you know, if you're suggesting new dates rather than them, then you probably need to rejig what you're delivering.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. Yeah, if they're not as interested in getting in it as you are, then you have to look at what you're doing. Absolutely. So Gareth, you touched on it briefly about stuff that they may ask before the calls. Do you send questions to your clients ahead of time? Are you saying, we're going to come on the call and we're going to talk about this, but I need to know X, Y, and Z? And it's like what you said earlier, Gareth, of what are your plans for the next few months? What's this? Is there specific things that you send out in advance saying, either these are the questions we need to know the answer to, or we need you to bring this to the meeting in preparation for us?
I'd say not to every review. So every sort of, say it's on a quarterly basis, you might say every other, like, you know, bring us, you know, if you've got anything in terms of what changes you're looking to implement. This time of year is particularly important for us because we're now looking at obviously growth and things for budgeting for next financial year. So we will say, you know, can you give us bring through an idea of how much you're going to grow by this year? Is there any acquisitions we need to be aware of? Is there any projects you're looking at implementing this year? The main ones are, you know, following the ITIL framework we follow. Are there any roadblocks that are now coming up? You know, and can you bring that? You know, if they're not urgent, if they're urgent, get in touch with us now. If they're just things you want us to be aware of that might be coming up in the next 3, 6, 12 months, bring them in as well, so we can start putting plans in place so those roadblocks don't happen.
Yeah,
I think it's, to a large extent, we lead it, well, we let the client lead it more so in terms of, this is your time to also talk to us. We will bring our information that you've told us you want previously, and we'll bring that and give you a review on that. And obviously we'll go through the account itself, but this is also their time to actually sit down with us and say, well, this is what we're planning. You know, we've had a couple this year where they've got, we want to bring Copilot into the fold. You know,
yeah, and how are you going to help you do that? Yeah,
they can see, oh, you just switch the license. Well, no, it's not. It's doing a full audit of your tenant to make sure your tenant's secure and everything else before you let Copilot loose in it. So just to be able to have those understanding, and then you can come prepared. So yeah, it's not just a case of adding a license. There's actually a lot of back end work we need to make sure is covered, which it likely already is, but we just need to double check it and make sure you're ready to bring Copilot or any other AI platform to the front before letting your staff loose with it. Also things like on-premise server, you know, anything like on-prem projects, anything like that in terms of review, let them bring it to the table. But yeah, we generally just have a general question, you know, is there anything we need to be aware of before we meet up, just so we can
have them think about it as well.
We are forewarned.
Yeah, but it is, because sometimes it's hard if you just hop on a call with someone and they're going, so what is this call about again? And they haven't thought about the thing. They haven't like even just spent 24 hours going, God, I'm speaking with Gareth tomorrow. Is there anything that I need to speak to him about? And it is saying them things kind of at least gets the brain moving a little bit.
Yeah, and if they give us a bit of notice as well that they want to talk about that, that's great. We can then come to the table. So well, actually, we've had a think about it internally. Here's some ideas that may work. However, further conversation may. So actually, we've had thoughts, but they're not appropriate. Let's discuss it further. Let's get the technical team involved. You can then start having the more appropriate conversations to that particular client at that point, which is then more beneficial to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Raphael, what about you guys? Do you guys kind of send out questions ahead of time, ask for resources ahead of time, anything to that effect?
No, I think same as Gareth, just the very general free form, you know, anything that you want us to talk about or anything that we should be, you know, preparing for that we could present. We did once have a customer who did their own. They before coming to us and meeting, you know, and having an annual meeting with us, they actually did a survey of all their staff about what their experience with IT were, which was really interesting. But you know, if anyone asked me to fill in a form or answer a questionnaire, it's very unlikely to happen. So I may rightly or wrongly, I don't expect it from others.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So Becky was excited for that part. This is the bit I'm excited to hear your answer to this question. What tells you that a client is disengaged in a QBR?
I think from our point, it's the seeing the eyes glaze over and the vacant expression that always ends up turning up. At that point, yeah, I think you then have to go, yeah, I think we're done with this conversation at this point, which is why I sort of mentioned earlier, it's important to sort of split it and make sure the right, you know, is rather than have everyone in one meeting at the same time, it's probably beneficial, certainly from where we looked at it, to actually have maybe two shorter ones, but involve the stakeholders that apply to that particular area. So you'll have your technical review, followed by your business review or vice versa. So actually, if if someone wants to come into the technical ones that they wouldn't normally, great. But then if they drop out, so that's fine. But I think if you try and force it all in one go to everybody, yeah, that's it's looking for the body language of they've switched off now.
And that is worth like kind of going into another point there of like, do you then go, okay, like I think we've got everything we're going to get out of this call. Let's kind of just finish up and do something else, or how do you handle it, I suppose, is the fair question there.
I think it depends on the client. I think, yeah, some of those, should definitely tell that approach. Yeah, I think we're done here. You know, let's not. The trade-off, I can see in his eyes getting tired and things like that. Those sorts of conversations come up. However, some other clients, you can actually, you know, you can be quite candid and go, you know, is this what you want, or do you know? I'm getting the impression you've sort of switched off to it. You know, do we need to be doing this? You know, is this right? Are we doing this right or wrong? Give us some feedback. So obviously we can firstly re-engage you into the session now, but in the future we don't lose that engagement moving forwards.
Yeah. Raphael, is it similar for you guys that the kind of glazing of the eyes is the telltale sign? Or what's your kind of
I don't know, in the constantly online world that we live in now, I think that's a take. And even if someone's really interested, someone was telling me the other week that, you know, modern produced TV shows are dumbed down because it's accepted that people aren't focusing because they're also scrolling on their phone. So, you know, I think when you're, you know, even in the best of meetings, I kind of expect that someone will be seeing the notifications and the emails that come in the corner. So if they have that glazed look, I'm not too worried. But I think you know, if they're disengaged with us, they're either not picking up the phone to me if I call them, or I'm pushing them to reschedule and put dates in the calendar. If I say, should we meet, and they say, what about next week or the week after, then I think we're in a great. If you know, if they're responding well like that, I think that's great. And I think that arches back to the, you know, when we were talking about this a couple of months ago internally, about what is a good QBR, what is a good customer relationship. I said, you know, I think back to the account managers that I have with our vendors and suppliers, and who is it that I always pick up the phone to? And why do I always pick up the phone to them? And how do I make sure I am that to our customers? How do I make sure that, you know, if they're not available, that they will voluntarily call me back? because they know that by answering the phone and talking to me, they are getting value. And so for me, that's what we're always asking ourselves. And it's actually quite funny. My partner, my business partner, heard me saying this, and so he called up the bank manager and invited them round just to see, because he's like, I've never met this person, so invited them round. And oh my gosh, she was confused why she was there, what she was doing there, and what next. So that's an example.
I'm gonna try that. That sounds great.
Let's just start testing
That's not
some
a great
relationship.
relationship. But like, I was told explicitly you don't need to shout Huntress on this call, but our account manager, Lucy, like, I know that if she's calling me up, it's because I'm going to get value out of it, and I know that it's worth me calling back. Whether it's to save money or increase value or something like that, I know it's important. And so, yeah, that's, I think, the overriding approach.
Yeah, I'd say the same with Jamie as well. Exactly. If he rings me, it's generally a call I'll pick up and answer.
And that's when you were just talking about that, I was actually thinking about how when I went to the team and said, like, does anyone have any good ideas of people to talk to this? It was Lucy said, I can text Raphael, he'll do it. And Jamie said, I can text Gareth. And you guys replied like instantly. So that is always like good. And I will make sure they listen to this if they're not on already. But no, absolutely. So we do have a second poll question going out to the team. So it is going to be, when presenting to a client's executive team, which topic do you find most difficult to translate into business language? So Raphael and Gareth, I don't know if you guys have an answer yourself of what you find the most difficult to translate, or kind of what sticks out most to you.
Go on,
Where to start?
You're sorted. We need to put our hands up before we speak.
I think all of it's quite challenging. And so one of the biggest questions that we ask, at an onboarding kickoff with a customer, the question that we ask them is, what makes you money? That's the number one thing that's important to business. What makes you money? And even more importantly, what stops you making money? And then, whilst you have a risk register in, ISO and any compliance framework, this is kind of what we then take of our focus to conversations with them in QBRs when it comes to investment, is you've told us that this is how you make money. And you said, if this doesn't work, then this stops you making money. Okay, how are we investing in that? And what is our plan to further enforce that and reduce the risk of losing money? And I think everything else then follows on there. The ROI follows on there because it's understandable to them. And over the years, I've had some really interesting, conversations with customers. We ran to customers and said, you should have a second internet line. Sounds very sensible and very great. And a customer turned around to me and said, no, and I was a bit shocked. And then they said, like, for us, that's not a risk, because if we do that, we don't have any on-premise infrastructure. And this was like 7-8 years ago. We'll just send everyone to the Starbucks down the road. So it might be 100 quid a month, £100 a month, but it's just not worth the money for us. So, when you approach that and help them understand their risk and help them bring it to you and you can talk to them about it, then they propose that to you and say, let's go and do that because that will help us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say this is the whole thing of knowing and understanding the room you're in. Realistically, would I go to a CEO or CFO about security and compliance frameworks? Probably not, because that's not going to be something they're fully invested in. That's what they have a data protection officer for, an ISMS manager for. That's what that they're going to have that person. They will then have that conversation later. They'll, whether it's everything's fantastic, nothing to worry about, or quarterly business reviews, but with Apigraph brought this up, we need to look into this. That's a conversation between those two people because they have that relationship already. We'll then look to jump in and say, we can join you if you need us to back it up. But I wouldn't my initial bit would not be to have like that kind of conversation with those kind of people. Similarly, you wouldn't have necessarily have technology spend and return on investment with the compliance manager. It's understanding the room, who you're talking to and who you're directing that information at. I would say you'd have, from experience, you will have at least one of all of the above at some point with everyone in the room. Which it just goes out, splitting it down, actually having your technical element and then your business element, because actually you've got two very different audiences who will understand that information differently, and you may not be able to deliver it in a way that they want to hear it, you need to utilize other people in the room to deliver that message for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's more, rather than trying to translate it, it's more understanding who's in the room and who's actually responsible for what bit, and then let them have those conversations between them, with us being able to be there to back them up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get it where all those roles are one person, and then yeah, you do have to try and figure it out. But I'd say most of the time there's at least two people in the room. One does more the finance and business side, the other one's doing more the actual technical compliance and understanding side of it.
Yeah. And so hypothetically, you have the executive in the room, you have the CEO, COO, whoever it may be. What do you find they care about the most? Is it the financial impact? Is it, I know we kind of said the business continuity, they'll go down to Starbucks, that's fine. But I suppose maybe the picture has changed. Is it the risk? Like what are you seeing that they care about the most when they're in the room with you?
I think for us, it's more them seeing that we understand that everything, the entire landscape is constantly evolving, particularly when it comes to compliance, cyber security, and everything else. Yeah, we can throw, and one of our partners has a fantastic half-yearly report into how the landscape's looking. Now, I can give that to a few of them, and they'll just go, "What is this?" But what I do need to is, here's what I can do to them is go, "Here's the latest report. This is what we're working against." They go, "Cool, fine, not a problem. I'm happy with that." So it varies. I mean, I think it's more the value. If you can go to them and present the value of what you're offering, that's what they're concerned more with. You know, are you allowing them to keep doing business? As Raphael mentioned, you know, what does it take for them to make money? Are we creating any roadblocks, or are we reducing roadblocks? Hopefully it's the latter, but ultimately that's generally where the conversations at that kind of level goes, is big picture, where are we, where do we want to be, how are we impacting that big picture? And then it just filters down from then. You then go to your individual members of the different bits. But Raphael, I don't know if you're in any different, but
I think, you know, particularly with smaller businesses where your contact is the owner operator, a lot of the time their business is personal to them. And so they want to know, where am I at risk? Where am I at business risk? What are other people doing? What's coming down the line that I might not be prepared for? So I think that's what they want to most hear about, is what are my risks, and where should I be investing to kind of accelerate my business so that it has the chance in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of I'm going back again to what we were saying about firewalls, all that side of things. What did you guys find the hardest metric to reframe? So what you guys can clearly see as the risk, what you can clearly see as the burden. What was the hardest one for you to reframe and pass across to them? Good question.
It's how do you answer without throwing somebody under the bus, I think, with the "I told you so" response. And I suppose the biggest one we had, actually, and thankfully, you know, big up Huntress here again, actually saved them from it, is we had a client where they had remote desktop services, etc., for remote workers, things like that. And we'd been saying for ages, you know, we need to put some additional layers of security here, because this is exposed. It needs to be sorted. You need to do this. And every time he's got, it'll be all right. It'll be fine. We can't afford it. So this isn't a case of what, you know, we can work with you commercial wise to sort this out, but ultimately it needs to be done. In the end, they got attacked, and thankfully the Huntress platform picked it up, locked it all down, and saved them. But yeah, it was, as I said, it is one of those. Sometimes you just have to have that "I told you so" moment.
Yeah.
And this is why it's important. Thankfully, Huntress caught it, and we were able to save it. Then actually, we then said, that zero trust that we've been badgering on about for the last 12, 18 months, this is why you needed it. And then they've gone, okay, yeah, we'll have it then. So it's the whole shutting the gate once the horse has bolted, but thankfully we managed to rescue the situation. But yeah, that's probably the most extreme one we've had.
And how do you find it hard to quantify that over without making it sound like you're fear mongering. Without it being like, I'm trying to scare you enough to sell you something, which isn't what your goal is. You're just trying to let them know that it's there.
I think this is going to sound really wrong, so I apologize. I think that the thing though is now it's happened to a client. Actually, you can then go with the case study and say, this is a demonstrable, this is evidence that it will happen. Not it might or if, it will. It's just a case of when. And once you've got that to go in, actually, you're not scaremongering at that point. You're actually going off fact. You're going to say this has physically happened to a business in the same area as you. You wouldn't class them as particularly high risk, but they've found an opportunity and they've exploited it. And that's the world that we live in. It's just being. I think there's always going to be an element of fear mongering in it, because that is just the landscape we work in. It's just trying to put it across in a way where you're not deliberately fear-mongering, just giving them the facts as they are, and not
the situation.
Massive emphasis on it. You know, there's we dropped a vendor last year because of 2 or 3 CVS scores of 10. Well, at that point we say, well, we're going to have to replace it, because this is like going on holiday, advertising on Facebook you're on holiday for 2 weeks, leaving the door unlocked, and telling everyone you're leaving the door unlocked with the code to the alarm. And you you have a bit of a laugh and a joke about it, but ultimately that is what you're doing by having this hardware in place at the moment. Let's move you away from it. And it's hard. I think, particularly with the landscape as it is at the moment, it is hard. Because there's always that the whole thing is the fear of the risk and what is the actual risk.
And you see firsthand that it is real risk. It's not,
it's real risk, and you have to go. It was me that was up at 11:30 with the guys at the Huntress team trying to sort it out, and me having to, and me personally having to make that phone call to a director saying your system's under attack and we're working on it. Thankfully, it's contained, but obviously we now need to do the damage control and see what has actually been damaged. Thankfully, it wasn't a lot, but it was very, very little. But that first time, actually, it's making use of that and going, this is a real case scenario. It did happen. This isn't me making it up and making it sound worse than it is. That is the raw fact of it. There's the report, everything else. And I think that's the key bit, is having the demonstrable evidence from other clients that you deal with, where you said it is using it as a case in point, but actually it goes to confirm what we're saying. We're not just trying to sell you something for the sake of selling it.
And I think a step further than what you're saying, Gareth, as well, I think one of the biggest struggles is a lot of us as MSPs are taking a lot of this stress and this risk. You said the client has a potential security incident, and it was you that took the hit. It was you that was up till 11 p.m. and yes, you gave them a call. But as you know, when you work with small businesses where it's an own proprietor, and this is their life. This is their life's work a lot of the time. And should they have an incident, like those real stories and the shock of their face where they realize that they could have lost everything, and really conveying that over to customers is the important thing. But I do think that the biggest challenge over here is conveying what we're sacrificing, those late nights that we're putting up because of their lack of investments. I always remember this story that another one of our directors told me, that a customer had a manufacturing plant, and there was one PC that was responsible for operating the plant. He turned around to them and said, look, you need to get a server. You need dual power supplies. You need that level of redundancy. You probably need a second server as well. And they turned around and said, well, if it breaks, I know that you'll send someone on site to fix it. And his response was fantastic. It was amazing. He said, the answer to trying to cut an apple with a chainsaw isn't to live closer to the hospital. You can't expect us to absorb that risk from you. And so being able to communicate with the customer what their roles, responsibilities in this relationship, and what we need out of them, what we need in terms of their investment, and where they can't turn around and push that responsibility and that reliance on us is really important, but also very challenging for them, to explain that to them.
Yeah, I think the biggest one for that one was the ransom note. That specific example I gave to them is we kept a copy of the ransom note.
Oh, really?
That's what was left on it.
Wow, that's interesting.
Thankfully, the platform was like it sent off all the canary files and everything else, and I think they got a couple of the canary files and a handful of desktop shortcuts. It was nothing what they got hold of. But actually, when you go to them and say that's what was left on the server when they kicked it off, and you suddenly see that realization kick in across like, so not only was it you up at 11:30 at night fixing the problem, it nearly cost me $6 million.
Yeah, it is. It kind of hits home then a little bit more. Absolutely.
It really does. And we've kept that and we use that still. We still have it and we still have the Huntress report showing how it picked up the ransomware note and everything. So we use it now as a chain of events, as a case study. So whenever we're doing this is why you need zero trust. This is over VPN. This is why you need it. There's the chain of events because someone didn't do it.
Yeah,
right.
No, absolutely.
And
I want to see the ransom note.
I'll send it over to you. I'll dig it out. We've still got it, so I'll dig it out.
Yeah, I want to see that. We are coming into the last 5 minutes. I have 2 last questions that I want to run through, but if anyone else has any more, please throw them in. These are my kind of final questions for the whole QBR topic. What's one thing that you guys have removed from your QBRs that you felt made them better or more effective?
I suppose from our standpoint, whilst we're still quite early on in this process, it would be removing technical stuff.
Okay.
For want of a better term, they may want to see they may want to see just the top level figures, like from SOC, from email protect. They might just want to see the very top level figures, but they don't need to see the individual report elements of it, of how many millions of bits were scanned and how many of those turned into it. They don't need that. They just want to say, done this, done that, that's it, job done. So I think moving that all out, not focusing on little things. So, so-and-so's PC is getting to 4 or 5 years old, it's time to replace it. That's more of a that's just a conversation to have. Input, over the phone. It's like, he's replaced it. I think moving all that kind of stuff out is where we're going, and it's more just making it more about the strategic journey for both us as a provider and to them as a client and as another business. It's which directions do we need to go in for both of us to achieve our goals together?
Absolutely. Raphael?
Maybe it's a personal thing, but getting away from formalities, I think, has been important. So removing sort of reliance on slides where, you almost have a slide that says insert conversation here, and going more towards, yes, there are definitely slides and things that want to show up, but kind of bring that in, but as quickly as possible, get back away from that, making it more free flowing and making it more conversational.
Absolutely. And finally, what is one question that every MSP should ask themselves before they walk into a QBR? I think we spoke about it earlier. I think I know Raphael's answer.
Why do they want to talk to me?
Exactly. What's the value they're getting?
I'm a little bit just like, I quite like to. I promote people contacting me. I'm quite happy, and I'll always finish an email or a conversation with, particularly stakeholders. Stakeholders, it's like, if you need anything, pick the phone up. I would sooner have 15 phone calls over a couple of weeks than they go into a meeting going, well, why has this been left till now to try and sort out? Why is this becoming a roadblock now? I think, and to sort of further what Raphael said in the last question, make it less formalized. Let's just make it about having conversations and about making sure, as entities, the two are aligned and we're both trying to hit the same thing.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much to both of you guys for joining me. Thank you for everyone who logged in and listened to us. We will be back in April for the next Fireside chat, and it's been a pleasure. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
See you later.